Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Millie if you're new here, and if you are, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're returning, thank you so much. Different kind of video today. I'm actually super excited. You can tell by the title. I am doing a book review, book recommendations video, which I actually mentioned I was gonna do in one of my vlogs. A lot of people in my personal life know this about me, but I feel like you guys don't know that I'm like obsessed with reading. I read like 5 books a month, and it's like a really big part of my life. One of my biggest hobbies. I've always loved to read since I was little. So I thought that I would start incorporating it onto my channel. I feel like I look bald with this hairstyle. My hair is greasy, so I did like a slicked back pony and then I braided it, but I feel like I look kind of bald. Let me know down below if you think I look bald. Also in a different part of my living room, so you have the lovely picture stand behind you because I honestly didn't feel like cleaning off my couch. It's just a wreck. So I don't know why I feel like I have to explain myself, but I do. So different part of the living room, but anyway, yeah, I today am sharing with you guys my top 10 favorite romance books / series of all time, which when I say was like one of the hardest things to narrow down. Like I spent hours sifting between books, but I'm really excited with the list I do have and all that. I also think that I'm gonna do this for other genres. I don't strictly read romance. It is my favorite genre, but I'm thinking about doing this with like thriller / mystery, fantasy, drama, like for each category. So for people who aren't into romance, don't worry, I read every genre, but I thought I would start with this because I feel like that's what most of my viewers also read. Anyway, so that's what we're gonna do today. Another disclaimer, I don't want to butcher authors' names / I can't remember every author's name, so I'm going to have the book cover / author and title on the screen because I don't have all the physical copies with me. Some were read on my Kindle, some I just have lent to people over the years or whatever it may be. I'm going to have everything on the screen and down below with links, all that, so that you guys know what I'm talking about and can purchase the book, read more into it if you want. And yeah, that's everything that I want to say in this long intro. So let's go ahead and get started with the book review. Okay guys, I'm going to be looking at my phone because I have the list of my top 10 on my phone. So if you see me looking down, that is why. I also did want to say these are in no particular order. I thought about ordering them, but it was way too hard. And I just didn't really feel like that because it already took me forever to accumulate 10. So they are in no particular order. They're just my top 10 favorite out of every romance book I've read. So starting off with the first is the Simple Wild series / book 1. And the first book by far is my favorite, but I wanted to include the entire series because I feel like you can't just stop at the first book. But pretty much it is about a girl in her like early 20s, kind of around my age, and she lives in Toronto, Canada, and she gets kind of just an out of the blue phone call that her dad, that she's been estranged from, who lives in Alaska, is very sick and could possibly be passing away soon because he's super sick, and it's really her only last opportunity to see him. So she ends up flying to Alaska, and then the romance kicks in because she meets a bush pilot in Alaska, Jonah, my favorite person ever. And it's kind of their story about how she moves all the way from Canada to Alaska, how she adjusts, and then of course their love story, how they meet. They actually hate each other at first because they have nothing in common, and then of course it moves into their romance, and then the rest of the series is just what happens with her family and him, and if she stays in Alaska, if she goes back home, all of that. I also am not going to go in super detail with the plot because I'm the worst at accidentally spoiling stuff, so I'm just going to give very baseline plot and just trust me when I say the book is incredible. And of course if you want to read more into it, you can do that on your own time, but I really don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, so that's the whole series, but I really do recommend the first book specifically. It definitely gets you hooked, and you're going to want to read the whole series anyway. Second, I debated talking about this book because there is controversy with the author. There were some racist allegations made about her, and I just did want to put it out there that I do not support her, and I read this book years and years ago before I knew anything about the author. So I did debate including this book because of course I don't want to tell anybody to support an author who has beliefs like that. But I will say that you can read this book online. Like you can just look it up and read it online for free. So if you do want to read this book, you can do that instead of supporting the author by purchasing the book. But I did want to include it because it's one of like my OG favorite romance books of all time. I read it in high school and it made me kind of fall in love with like new adult romance books. So I did want to include it. And that is Beautiful Disaster by Jamie McGuire. And it's just such a classic like new adult romance book. It takes place in college. It's like a college setting. And one of my favorite things about the plot, how it's a little bit different, is that the main male character he's a boxer. He boxes and he fights. So it kind of has that like violent kind of side twist component to it besides just regular college romance. But basically it is just about a girl and a boy who meet in college, kind of good girl, bad boy, but they both have had pasts. And they basically end up moving in together, or she moves in with him because she loses a bet. And that's kind of what happens. It's like a close proximity trope for half the book where they are stuck in his apartment, and then that kind of starts the romance. It's not really enemies to lovers, but it's kind of like I don't really like you to lovers, if that makes sense. I don't really know, but it's amazing. I just think it's a super sweet book. And although it sucks that the author is like that, I definitely still do recommend it because it is one of my favorite books, and it was one of the first romance books, like real romance books that I ever read. And I love a college-based romance book. It makes it seem a little bit more realistic, real life oriented. So definitely recommend that, especially if you're new to kind of the whole romance genre in general. Next, we have the entire Voyeur series. This one is a doozy. I read it over quarantine, so if you're bored and you have nothing to do, I think there's 6 books, and it's called Voyeur. And I read it on, that was so aggressive, Voyeur. Okay guys, I had to take a tiny little break from filming, but I'm back, and I think I was talking about the Voyeur series. So Voyeur I actually read on Kindle. This is like a 6-book series, so it's very long, but they're all companion novels, so you can read one without having read the other. So with this series, they're all incredible. The one I really wanted to emphasize as like my favorite, why it's in my top 10, is Teacher. It's actually the last book of the entire companionship, so I had to wait till the last book for it to be my favorite. I don't even think this series would have gone into my top 10 if it weren't for this last book. But it's called Teacher, and that's gonna be the one I'm talking about. The whole series stems around this, I don't wanna call it a sex club. It's not a sex club. It's like an adult club, I guess we'll call it. I don't really know, but and it's called Voyeur. The club's called Voyeur. So it kind of stems around everybody's personal stories with that, and they're all kind of in the same either working group or friend group, things like that. But anyway, the last book stems around obviously a boy and a girl. It's actually an older man and kind of a younger woman, and she has had issues with sexual assault and past issues in her history, and that has translated to her having a hard time opening up to another person emotionally and physically. She just has a really hard time with that, understandably, from what has happened to her in the past. And I won't ruin it by telling you what happened because that's kind of part of the whole series. But she ends up, I guess, working with him, and he's her teacher to help her move past this kind of roadblock with being physical with somebody else and also emotionally open. And I just think it's the cutest thing ever because she just starts off as being very shy and very blocked off, obviously from her past trauma, and she really only feels comfortable opening up to him. And then of course, as you can probably guess, they end up getting an emotional connection and falling in love. I'm not ruining anything, don't worry. That's kind of just like an obvious part of it. But that's how that happens. I just think the whole storyline is super, super cute. I love fixing you trope. I just think it's really cute because I feel like that never actually pans out in real life. So I like reading about it in books, but the whole series is great. I specifically recommend it, Teacher, which is the last one. Next, we have the Wait For You, Be With You, Stay With Me series. They're all, once again, companion novels. And I specifically want to mention the first one. The first one's my favorite by far, called Wait For You. The rest of the series is great too. I read the whole series and they're all good, but Wait For You is by far my favorite, so that's gonna be the one I'm speaking of. Once again, college based romance, and once again, the girl has a past, with sexual assault, and that's in her history. So once again, she's very blocked off emotionally and physically to men, and she's at a new college and she doesn't really know anybody, and she kind of ends up running into, actually I think she literally runs into in the hallway, like one of the most popular boys at school. He's older than her, he's really goofy, everybody loves him, he's super outgoing, and she's just not. So she kind of just like avoids him and wants to stay out of the spotlight, but he actually ends up partnering with her in some things for school, so they end up having to work together, and it's just really cute and sweet how he also helps her overcome some of the things from her past. It's a lot of back and forth, like will they end up together, is it gonna work, things like that. So kind of your basic romance storyline, but just really, really well written and super cute. I just was like smiling the whole book. So that is Wait For You, and of course you can check out the rest of the series as well. Next book, Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I feel like everybody and their mother has read this book, but it's popular for a good reason. I've read like every Colleen Hoover book ever, but Ugly Love is probably, yeah, I mean, it's in my top 10, so it's probably my favorite book by her. I do like it because it is different than typical romance books, like the perspective switches, it goes from past to present, things like that you don't typically see in a romance book. So I think that's what I really like about it. But basically it's about a girl named Tate and a boy named Miles, and Tate ends up moving to San Francisco to move in with her brother because she's in school and she is saving up for her own place, and she's in school trying to work, doing both. So she moves in with her brother to save money, and across the hall is Miles, her brother's best friend, so that's how they kind of meet. And in this book, Miles is the one with the troubled past. I will not give away his troubled past because that actually is a big component of the book, but he has an extremely, extremely troubled past, like very severe. And so he can't open up to anybody like at all. Like when I say cannot, it's not like your typical romance books where it's like they don't at first, but then they do. Like he is like standing firm that he will not ever be with anybody again because he is so traumatized to what happened to him, and he's just not ever in the market. So him and Tate actually end up having kind of friends with benefits relationship because they're both obviously attracted to each other, but he does not want any form of relationship or anything. So they kind of start that friends with benefits, and then we all know like kind of how that goes. It just never works. So it's how they kind of work through that, and it's very sad. There's a lot of sad parts. I won't give away any of the ending. I won't even say if it's a happy or sad ending, but it's just very, very good and very well written, and that's all I'm gonna say about it. If you guys have not read it, I'm honestly shocked. I actually reread this book a couple weeks ago to make sure that I wanted to include it in this video, and I do, so definitely check out Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Okay, next you guys. Oh my gosh, this is probably one of my favorite books of all time, if not my favorite book of all time, and that is The Hating Game. And I know there's also so much hype about this book, but I don't really like rom-com books. That's never been my romance genre, so I actually put off reading The Hating Game for like months and months and months because I just am not, I like rom-com, but it has to be a really, really, really good one for me to get invested in it. So I just put off the book. Even though I had heard amazing things about it, I was like, oh, I don't really like rom-com. I like much deeper emotional romance books, so I just don't want to read it. I eventually ended up ordering it, and now I'm laughing at myself because it's literally my favorite book ever. Both of the main characters hate each other. They're always in competition trying to one-up each other. They both came from different firms and now work at the same company, so they have kind of that rivalry, and they just butt heads all the time. But it's also, the writing is so good because it's like funny and quirky at the same time, so you're like laughing, but it's also very like, actually the aggression and competition between them is real. So it starts off like that, but then as kind of obstacles at work come up and things come up, they have to kind of put that aside to be able to get the job done. So that's kind of how they start developing a relationship. And nothing super deep happens in this book that I could really pinpoint about why I like it so much. I just think the writing and their interactions with each other are so cute. Like, I had butterflies the whole time. I thought it was very realistic. It could definitely happen to somebody, which I also like in romance books. There's also like a big competitive presentation that they have to do at work where they're competing against each other, but they're also like falling for each other at the same time. That really like contradicts what they want. If they want to go for work or if they want to go for love. So that's like riveting. And then the end is just like the sweetest thing ever. So just go read it. It's like my favorite book ever. And I feel like I did a bad job explaining it, but it's amazing. Next we have Punk 57, which is also one of my favorite books ever. I don't even know how I'm gonna describe Punk 57. It is very different. The plot is super different. So if you're looking for something that's just not like a typical basic plotline romance book, Punk 57 is definitely up your alley. Basically, it starts off with a boy and a girl. They were pen pals growing up, like as in like wrote letters to each other. Obviously, Millie, that's what a pen pal is. But they were pen pals growing up and they never met, and they decided to keep it that way. And they were kind of each other's like outlet for things going on in their personal lives, because since they had never really met, it made it easier for them to share things that were going on in their lives. The girl actually turned into kind of the mean girl at school and wouldn't admit it in her letters, I guess you could say. So it switches perspectives a lot, but she, in her regular everyday life, her actions were very mean. They were a very mean girl. But in her letters, she was still the same down-to-earth girl that she had always been growing up. So the boy only saw what he was getting in the letters until one night he actually ended up meeting her in person just on a whim, but he did not disclose to her that he knew it was her, if that makes sense. So he found out that it was her, his pen pal from forever. And he came to learn quickly that she was a horrible person in real life. He ended up going to the same school that she went to, and he went as a different name. And she, of course, had never seen him, so she didn't know it was him. So she kept acting like the total brat that she was. And he basically just bullied her and pushed her because he knew that she was better than how she was acting in school and kind of just putting up a front. So from there, it kind of flows into their relationship, and it's a little bit enemies to lovers because they really hate each other in school. And then of course there's going to be like a bomb drops when she finally realizes that he knows it's her and he never said anything. If I'm not explaining this right at all, I'm so sorry. Just go check it out for yourself. But basically the plot is very intricate and very interesting, and I just loved how he could go from just so mean to so sweet. I don't know if that's weird of me, but I really loved that about him. And then of course her character development, going from just really a horrible person to changing her ways, was like great to see. So love Punk 57, great book. I read it on my Kindle, highly recommend. Next we've got the off-campus Briar U series. It's off campus, and then the spin-off series is Briar U. I recommend every book. I think there's 4 books in each series, and I recommend all 8, and you can read them as standalones. Or the reason why it's in my top 10 is because of The Deal, which I'll put on the screen. The Deal is the first book written in both the series. It's from the off-campus series, but it is my favorite out of all of the books. Unpopular opinion, a lot of people don't like this book, but I love it. The Deal, it takes place in college, another college romance book. It takes place with different members of a hockey team in Boston, I think. It's in Boston. So it's all the boys from the hockey team. It's basically all their stories. The first book, which is what I'm gonna be talking about because it's my favorite, is about Hannah and Garrett. And basically they have a deal to help each other out in school. Hannah has a crush on somebody else, and Garrett needs help with school, and he's super popular, Mr. Hockey Player. So he proposes to Hannah, if you help me out in school, I'll help you win your crush because I'm super popular and I can get him to like you, that kind of vibe, which is like not true, but whatever. I don't know why I like books where girls have had like sexual assault issues. You'd think that that would be like not something you'd want to read about, but for some reason I just think it's like great to see people overcome that. So she also has had issues with that and has a hard time opening up to people physically, mentally, all of that. So it has that trope in there, which clearly I like. So she ends up tutoring him, and through that they just become friends, become more than friends, and he kind of helps her work through all of her past issues as well, which I just love reading about stuff like that. I just think it's super cute. So he helps work through all of that with her, and it just shows the relationship and how they kind of just go from working together because they made this deal to actually ending up together. And it's just super cute. Everybody loves the series. All the rest of the books are great too, but I just love Hannah and Garrett's relationship the most, and they pop up in the rest of the books too, so it's super cute. So definitely check that out if you haven't. That's a really good one to binge. Next, we have Birthday Girl, which is a very controversial book. I'm actually kind of shocked that I liked it, but Birthday Girl is actually one of my favorite books of all time. So if you haven't heard of it, the plot's kind of weird. It's about a girl and her boyfriend, and they actually end up moving in with the boyfriend's dad to save money because they are trying to move in together. She came from a horrible past. She like doesn't really have parents in her life. She grew up in like a trailer park situation, so they don't come from a lot. The boyfriend has good parents. They're divorced, but they had him super young when they were like 18 or something, and they have an okay relationship. They're not super close, but they're part of the picture, which is why boyfriend girlfriend decide to move in with his dad, who's probably around like 40, I would say, maybe like 39, 38, so he's much older for like a 20-year-old. So they move in to save money, save up for their own place, save up for college, all of that. And her boyfriend ends up kind of being a dud and just isn't serious about going to work and doing what they promised, saving up to move in to a separate apartment together. So she ends up kind of taking the brunt of the work. It kind of just shows how she stays at the house and gets closer and closer with the dad because her boyfriend is always off doing like God knows what and just isn't serious or responsible. So she's really trying to take on that role. And the dad sees it, and the dad's like disappointed in his son, but it's also his son and his son's girlfriend. But you can tell that the dad, Pike, and the daughter, Jordan, are kind of like each other, which is kind of weird because it's the boyfriend's dad, and the dad is also like 40, but I promise in the book it isn't weird at all. It would never work in real life. Like, I'm aware it would never work in real life, but it's just so good in the book, and the writing's great. It's Penelope Douglas. She's an amazing writer, and it's just really cute. And I guess the age gap isn't like that weird. I mean, it is weird. It's interesting how she did it, and I honestly thought I was gonna be like, there's no way she can pull this off, but she did, and it's great. And I'm done with explaining it because I'm doing a poor job, but great book, go read it. Okay, last book, and by no means my favorite, but this is The Wedding Date by Jasmine Gullery, I think. It is also, I guess you could call it a rom-com. I would say it's more rom than com, but like I said, I'm not crazy into rom-com romance books, but this book, I don't know what about it, but I've read it like 4 times, so I was like, I'm including it. I've literally read it 4 times. I just think it is such a good book. I loved the plot. It starts off with 2 strangers meeting on an elevator, pretty much an apartment elevator, and basically the man has a wedding to go to, and there's this girl he's stuck with on the elevator, and he pretty much just begs her to be his wedding date because he does not want to show up to this wedding alone for reasons that you will read in the book, but he does not want to go to this wedding alone. She reluctantly says yes, and that's kind of what it stems from, and I just think that's like a really cute plot and would obviously never happen in real life, but it's just super fun and lighthearted. Nothing really deep happens, but it's also kind of that neither of them want a relationship and neither of their heads are in it, but then of course they start to like each other, and I love seeing that. I just think the dynamic is really fun with books like that, and of course weddings involved are always fun. So basically, yeah, they get trapped in an elevator together. She ends up being his wedding date, and it pretty much goes from there, and the relationship develops from there, but it's just a super cute, super well-written book. Super fun romance book for all of you guys who just like super lighthearted, fun romances, super good summer read. And then there's also The Wedding Party. There's a couple more books after that. I haven't read all of them, but The Wedding Date I have read for sure like 4 times, and it's super good. So definitely recommend that one. And that is going to close off my romance book recommendations. I did not mean for this video to be like 25 minutes long, but it's looking like it's gonna be about that long. All of them are gonna be listed below, as well as some other YouTubers who do book recommendations that I watch and get inspiration from. I'm gonna leave their links down below if you wanna check out their channels as well. And yeah, definitely give this video a thumbs up if you wanna see more book content from me. Definitely happy to give it to y'all. And yeah, that is everything, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.